Hey everyone, we want to thank you to the Business of Education podcast. Our guest today is Dr. Kent Scribner, former superintendent at Fort Worth ISD. He has 30 years in the education space, 20 years being a superintendent, had the luxury of building 4 new elementary schools during his time as a superintendent. Kent, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Kent, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We love hearing from people that are changing the lives of our kids and somebody that's done it at the size that you have. We felt like would be a tremendous value to our audience. And first thing I'd like to ask you is what got you into education? Is this something you knew you always wanted to do?
Well, it's interesting. I grew up in a family of educators, so obviously that was something that is an important part of the family conversation for a long time. I also grew up in a bilingual, bicultural family. My mother's. I joke when I introduce myself to large groups that my mother's from a place called Coatzacoalcos, Veracruz, Mexico, and my father's from a place called Bahaba, Maine. So understand diversity, understand difference quite a bit, and that's what we address in public education. I started as a high school teacher, then a high school counselor, became a school site administrator, assistant principal, and all those jobs up until I got into central administration, where I was superintendent in Phoenix for 13 years, and then for here in Fort Worth for almost 8 years. So it was a great run. Really enjoyed my time in public education. Now, after having retired after 34 years, see this as an opportunity to really kind of help systems and help leaders and parents and communities improve across the educational continuum in urban districts and rural districts across the country.
You said you came from, thank you for pointing that out. You said you came from a bilingual family. We have it that you started off doing high school Spanish teaching. Is that correct?
Yes, I did. I was a Spanish teacher for a few years in a urban community, actually in Philadelphia, with students who grew up in Spanish speaking homes, large Dominican, Puerto Rican population, but still with regard to the mechanics and grammar and fluidity of Spanish, it was a great opportunity for me to really understand language development and literacy at the high school level. And these were low income students, so some of them were behind the grade level. Many of them were, and we really worked hard to bring them up to speed. But from that perspective, what really kind of opened my eyes to leadership was the fact that there were so many challenges, and continued on and became a high school counselor. The counseling degree actually is probably the most valuable degree of everything that I've done, because that's what you're doing in leadership in these kinds of educational positions. You're dealing with people, and you're helping them. You're reframing their issues. You're helping them solve problems. You're de-escalating. You're motivating, all of those kinds of things. So yeah, I think it's a nice fit to this next chapter, working in literacy and helping students improve.
When I was reading some of the things that you had done, those were 2 things that stood out to me. As one, being a Spanish teacher, but through the guidance counselor thing. I think that today more than ever, kids are coming in and confused at the directions that they want to go, and maybe not necessarily always in the right way. But I feel as a guidance counselor, you've almost got the better ability to sell the opportunity of education to kids. How do you feel like that ran side and side?
Well, I mean, again, education is unique. The profession of education is the only profession that creates all other professions. So we have a tremendous responsibility to help students not only in their development socially, emotionally, but also, and most importantly, in the fundamentals of reading, writing, and arithmetic. And I think really getting that basic literacy foundation is so important to everything else. Really, when we look at the kind of national scene, the districts that are doing the best in spite of the odds, serving low income and language minority students, are those that have tackled the issue of early literacy. And I really think the opportunity is there. School is only one piece of the puzzle. When you think about it, our students go to school for 7 hours of a 24-hour day, 5 days of a 7-day week, 180 days of a 365-day year. So really, when you look at it, they're in a school building only 15% of their lives. And so what we really need to do is create these kind of innovative opportunities beyond what the teacher can do with her 25 students to support that basic foundational literacy.
I'm super grateful that you pointed that out, because my wife and I often have a conversation about how much time our children should spend in school. And I'm a firm believer that they're there the right amount of time, or maybe they should be there a little bit longer if they're not learning enough. And she thinks that they should spend less. And when you break it down to that, it's really not that big of time that they get to stay there. And I think that that's probably why it's so important that schools have great relationships with the parents, because that education does need to pass on to the homes quite frequently.
Yes, and if I may, and so often teachers are led to focus on the top tier students, and a lot of time on those who are struggling. But the majority of our students are in the middle of the bell curve, and sometimes they get missed. And I think there's an opportunity for them to grow as well.
No, I appreciate that. Over the last, we've mentioned literacy, and obviously Ed Soma and our business is the business of literacy, and that's why we reach out to teachers like you that have made an impact and focus on literacy. In your opinion, how important do you think early reading skills is to a child's success throughout the rest of their school career?
Well, it's everything. And as we look at the national data with socioeconomic population being so polarized, we have a growing 60% of kids in the state of Texas live at or below the federal poverty line in public schools, and that's a huge issue.
Huge.
So literacy and reading, in my view, is the civil rights challenge of our time. If we can address early literacy, we can help students read on grade level by the third grade, which is really a huge predictor of success beyond high school and into the workplace. Then we can really change the lives of these students and their families and break the cycle of poverty. So it is not simply, fiddling around the margins. Reading and focusing on students' birth to kindergarten as well, starting early childhood and preschool, and exposing students to a literature and word-rich environment is huge. I know there's great data talking about the amazing difference in exposure to words and exposure to vocabulary among students who are middle and upper income students, as opposed to the enormous number of students who don't have those opportunities, living with lower resources.
All this stuff is so valuable. What you're saying, my oldest son, I'm a father of 4, but my oldest son is 10. And he brought home his first report card that actually gave him grades, and he didn't have anything under 90. And I said to him, I'm like, 90s, that's the best you can do? And he looked at me funny, and I'm like, Rowdy, I'm joking. I've never had a 90 in my life. And as you were saying this, we held Rowdy back in his second grade because we didn't feel like he was reading good enough. And that was kind of like what motivated me to really push behind Ed Soma. And it was things that we were going with in real time with my kids that really made me focus on this. And after holding him back, to see that amount of confidence that he took with him on that year, following into the next year, and so on and so forth, I think that that's probably a huge reason why he's having so much success now, is because we made that hard decision to focus on his reading, have him come back, repeat the second grade, and really make sure that he left the second grade reading. So thank you for pointing that out. There's my mind's going 100 different places just with everything that's going on over the last couple of years. We've seen this huge influx of kids coming in from other countries. We're seeing a shortage in, the amount of educators that are available. Do you think that there's a shortage because we're having more students coming in? Do you think it's a shortage because we're having a bilingual kids coming in? What do you think is the reason why we're seeing this huge shortage in education?
Well, teachers are overwhelmed. Teaching is the toughest profession, I believe, in the public sector. Obviously, the first responders and putting their lives on the line certainly is one category, but apart from that, teaching is extremely challenging, emotionally, physically. They're not compensated as they should, and they're always in the
Say that
middle of
again.
they're the political football when you see these larger kind of macro battles out there in society. It always ends up with regard to what is the teacher in the classroom doing, and teachers don't have time to be fooling around with any of these other political movements. They're focused on teaching and learning and reading and writing and arithmetic and all the other necessary courses. So from my perspective, one of the biggest challenges and why there is a teacher shortage is because they don't feel supported. They don't feel like they have enough resources. And with the innovations that are in technology, with the opportunities to leverage those, I think it will absolutely not only help students be more successful, but it'll keep teachers in the classroom because they feel that there is a safety net, that there is something that will help prop them up. And again, as I said, many times we're spending 80% of our time in the classroom. I remember when I was a teacher with those students who were challenged, and also with the higher achievers. But the other 80% in the middle really need something to keep motivated, and that's where I think we can leverage technology.
No, that's great. Thank you for transitioning into technology with us. That was kind of my next question. Obviously, and our audience knows that Soma is a speech technology to assist kids with reading. So one of the things that we needed to figure out early on was how to get teacher buy-in. You touched on a couple of things. They're underpaid. I want to point that out. Teachers are underpaid. They put in their own money some days into their classroom just to make sure that they're getting the resources that they need. But that being said, they also are overwhelmed with time because they're trying to make everything work on a low budget. So it takes a lot of time to be creative, to make things work within the budget that they are. And kids are becoming less and less engaged in the older ways of doing things.
Right.
What are some of the things that you think technology can do to drive engagement within the classroom, and how can we bring more time back to them?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that the traditional modes of teaching worked when we had traditional, two-parent families and sustainable wage and stay at home, one of the parents helping there. And that's not reality today. The white picket fence, two parents home unfortunately, is not the norm for the overwhelming majority of our students. So from that perspective, there is no question that moving away from the traditional and into the kind of transformational way of teaching using technology is absolutely necessary. Teaching is both art and science. The art of the interpersonal engagement, how to the one-on-one, which is going to be important in any aspect of teaching and in the workforce. But on the science side, that's where we need to leverage technology and be more effective and be more efficient. With the amazing diversity in our student population, whether it's socioeconomically, with regard to race, ethnicity, language, the core unifying concept will be technology. That's the language that all of our kids speak. And kids today growing up in the internet, growing up with the tablets and FaceTime, the screen time rather, I think there's a tremendous opportunity to leverage that into something much more productive than video games and TikTok.
No, I appreciate that. Some of the conversations that we have within our home is like, what's an adequate amount of face time? These are probably things that me and my wife disagree on a little bit just because of the business that I'm in. But I also am looking at the way that the future's going, right? Like we had said, traditional ways of things going. Well, technology is not slowing down. If you look at the advances in AI, we're going to have to really focus on what are the fundamental things that kids need to leave school with now
right.
to be successful. I carry an iPhone with me, and I'm sure, the majority of the people that listen to this pod have that iPhone in their hands, the majority of the day when they're not physically doing something with their hands otherwise. So for me to go and remember, the capital of Taiwan is probably not that important anymore when I have that answer at a Surrey ask away. You know what I mean? But I do believe that no matter what we do, no matter how technology advances, there's going to be two things that we're never going to be able to get away from, and that's basic mathematics and the ability to be a strong reader. Those are just certain things that we're never going to be able to get away from, especially if, kids are going through and becoming computer scientists and so on and so forth. But those are the foundations of those job skills. And we are seeing more things in manufacturing type roles become more automated. So, so thank you. In your opinion, is there such a thing as too much screen time?
Yeah, I mean, of course there is, but again, we have to kind of adapt to the world that we're living in. So we again back to not only teaching is art and science. Life is art and science, and the ability to interact, the ability to be socialized in a productive way, and also have the technical skills. With regard to that, again, you can't be an effective engineer or business person or scientist if you don't have the basics, if you don't have basic literacy. And that's what we're talking about here is how do you build the foundation? But what should students learn in a world when you can find information immediately on your iPhone? We need to learn how to think critically. We need to learn how to solve problems. We need to learn how to discern between what is genuine, authentic information and what is baloney and fantasy and misinformation. And I think those are the kinds of things that our educational system can focus on. But you can't do that if kids are not reading, if kids are not able to access that information. A good friend and colleague of mine, Jaime Casap, always talks about innovation. He was a former Google executive, and he says, "Don't ask kids what do you want to be when you grow up, because that implies you're going to have a job and have a boss and have that kind of traditional structure." He says, "Ask kids what kind of problems do you want to solve." And explore that, because that is where we get innovative. That is where we get excited. I have, when we think about the jobs that the young people today are entering into, my kids as well, I don't understand it completely, but they do. And we need to support them and guide them and provide them with that problem solving kind of guardrail and framework so they can be successful.
Thank you for saying that. One of the things that most recently, and I've always looked at the way that I did things, and I wasn't a scholar by any means. I couldn't read very well. I still struggle with it today. Once you see an email from me, you'll start to understand it's probably a ongoing joke within the office that just deciphering the emails that I send out because I'm so poor at it. But one thing I always did do as a child was dream and think about how I could make something different or better. And the amount of things that I built on Legos or mechanos, were crazy. And I think one of the best things that I see, or one of the things that get me excited for my kids, is when they ask for their first Lego set, because now I get to see them be creative and how they're going to do things, right? But a lot of kids also see things. And one time when I was talking with my oldest son, I'm like, well, what are you going to do when you grow up? And his answer was I'm going to run a Soma. You know what I mean? So kids have almost think that their parents are going to pave this way for them and become entitled, and so I moved to the U.S. 6 years ago from Canada. It wasn't a large leap. It was 6 or 7 years ago, just for clarity. I don't want anybody to fact check that and call me a liar, but somewhere around that timeline. But I come here with a different mindset. Do you feel like this influx of people coming into the U.S., this large push of immigration, is going to really drive new entrepreneurs, knowing that education is changing with that coming to the table?
Well, absolutely. And there's not an economy on the planet that is growing if their population is shrinking. So more people, the positive growth and new ideas and new cultures and new languages, that is not a bad thing. That is a good thing, because I think with education we can then embrace and bring into American culture the opportunity that exists in this country. It's amazing. What we're talking about is creating opportunity for students, and the best way to do that is with a solid education. When we talk about the workforce, when we talk about growth here, where I'm located in North Texas, the economic opportunity is amazing. And so when we talk about, who are you looking to hire, you're looking to hire people who have certainly the skills, but also, that you can trust.
Hmm.
And trust for me is about, can you trust people's motives? Can you trust their competence? Can you trust their dependability? Can you trust their collegiality? Do they play nice with others? And those are all things that education can create and can develop, along with, as long as there is the basic skills and the foundations. Again, and literacy is ever. You can't be a scientist. You can't be a plumber. You can't be virtually anything, unless you can read the handbook
Right.
and have literacy skills to advance.
I know for me, and just sticking on the topic of new immigration coming into the U.S., for obvious reasons, the United States is an amazing place. I moved here because I love it. I think that it's a great place, but I'm almost excited to see a first generation tradesperson come to my house when they're coming to bid something, because you know that they're coming with the utmost integrity. They're
Mm-hmm.
coming to make a difference. They're going to put their heart and soul into it because they've put everything on the line to come here, right? So, I think seeing these new flow of people coming into the country is exciting at the same time. But that being said, what are some of the challenges you think we're going to see in the classroom to service all these people from different parts of the world from a communication standpoint?
Well, yeah, again, there's only one teacher in a classroom of 20, 25 students. That teacher has to do a million things in the 55-minute period, if you will, and the ability to diversify instruction, the ability to meet students where they are. Again, the artificial intelligence, the technological advancements really will assist there. We have to do it intelligently, but providing teachers with supplemental resources, with the ability to break students into groups and to have each one of those groups be engaged, can only happen with the help of technology. A teacher can be in one place; he or she can be at one of the stations, one of the four tables of 5 or 6 kids, and the others, in a well-run classroom, will definitely lean on technological innovation. Again, as I said earlier, with the huge diversity, the rich diversity, the beautiful diversity that is the United States of America, the reason that we're the most powerful and successful country on the planet, is a result of that richness in diversity of ideas. But the common thread there, not only of our values, but the common communication thread is technology. We have to admit that.
Right.
So we have to use that for good, leverage that for good, and again build on those basics. And once that is established, the foundation, then things will flourish.
That's awesome. I've got a couple more questions for you. You'd mentioned AI. The good and the bad in the classroom. We're starting to see, kids learn it quicker. We're starting to see it used in multiple different use cases. What do you think? Give me one of each. Good that it's going to bring to the classroom, and a bad that it's going to bring to the classroom.
Well, I think, I'll start with the negative. I mean, I think the bad that it'll bring to the classroom is we have not done a good enough job of training our teachers, of training our leaders, training ourselves. It is a brand new experience for all of us. So we really need to figure out, when it comes to our professional development, that has to be a key area. All the conversation about plagiarism and all of that has its place, but we need to move away from it being a negative. And how can we help this? How can we use this and leverage this in a positive way? So I would say the downside so far is that AI is ahead of us, and we need to catch up, and we need to be trained and understand it better. Positive is it's wide open. I mean, I'm already using it. I like you, had been a leader of organizations, and now as an independent person, I'm writing a lot of my own stuff, my first drafts, and those kinds of things, and it helps a lot. I've always told my assistants and my colleagues, I'm not good with a blank sheet of paper, but if you give me a paragraph or two, I can make it my own. And that's kind of what AI does. When I say, give me an idea on X topic, it gives you that outline, that you can then personalize and put your own value, your own language, your own feeling into it.
I think that's probably the way that I've used it the most too, is just how you said it. Like I like to put like my thoughts into it and then like ask it to like give me more fuller structure behind what I'm trying to say in this type of context. And it gives you like almost another way to look at it. Like when you're asking for it to say, hey, this is the message I'm trying to get across. And it gives it back to you. It gives you a third, a third person to like really look into it and be like, am I getting the message across that I want to? So I agree with you on that. And I lied. I've got two questions left. What is something that teachers or parents, what is something that parents can do today to help assist their kids in school with their teachers and in the class?
Well, I think that parents can stand up and speak up and support teachers and support schools. I mean, we see public education is under attack in America, not because we don't want our students to teach and learn, but because it's an easy political football to attack. Whether it was during the pandemic, or whether it is issues of race or issues of sexual orientation, or whatever the issue is. It's so easy to say, I'm angry with this adult issue, so let me attack the local school where I think the root of the problem exists. And that's just foolishness. We have these carnival barkers, I call them, showing up to school board meetings and talking about everything under the sun except what's really important, and that is allowing and supporting teachers to teach students in an effective and an efficient way. It causes folks to spend so much time on unnecessary energy on foolishness. Really, public education, as I said, is the 5.5 million students in Texas. That is our future workforce. The future workforce in the decades to come is in our classrooms, are in our classrooms today. So we must invest in them. Not to get too political, but there are privatizing efforts out there that are holding dollars hostage that really should be invested in our schools, so that these kinds of supports can be provided to teachers. So what parents can do is speak up and stand up for a good quality education for all students, because we want all students to be successful, not just that small group that lives in my community or looks and sounds like me, but it will be to all of our benefit that all students, though even those who are different than me, are educated. When we look at economies that are really, really humming, they have minimized the poverty issues. And again, I'm about maximizing success, not minimizing failure.
No, I appreciate that. And with EdSoma, I always tell everybody that we need to stay apolitical. Both sides of the aisle need to be able to read, and I don't want to sell to one demographic over the other. I want to help all kids. So that's where we stay. But the question I'm about to ask you is on the other side, and it is very political, and I feel like it's another part where we need support. And if the right leader hears this, I think it can be very impactful. And feel free, if you don't care to answer this, I totally respect that. We've identified that parents can help within the classroom, but at a state level, we're constantly seeing schools have to suffer budget cuts every year to the point where they're pulling from somewhere. So if you could say one thing where the state could help, what would it be?
That the best investment we can make is an investment in education. In fact, even more specific, the best return on our investment is in early education. Birth to kindergarten to third grade, investing in those basic building blocks. If we want a thriving economy for all, then we have to invest in all of our students, especially the youngest, the least of these. When we if you want to talk about it in those terms, from my perspective, building strategic partnerships, whether that be with business community, whether that be with our neighborhood associations, with the chambers, with our faith leaders, We have a great opportunity to leverage our network of community organizations called churches, and get pastors and ministers and rabbis and imams
Thank you.
involved in supporting public education, because that really is what we're doing. What we're doing is preparing all students for success in life, in career, in college, in their future. So really, to me, that is not a political question. If what you care about is a thriving and healthy America, investing in education is the smartest thing you can do.
Thank you, Ken. I'm so grateful that you ended that with a strong structure behind how your life can go. And I am a true believer in faith can play a huge role in your life. So thank you for ending with that. That means a lot to me. But Ken, we love having you on the show. We look forward to working with you in the future and building great progress within our literacy journey for our kids and providing value to our teachers and the people using our program. So Ken, thank you so very much for joining us, and I look forward to talking with you again in the future.
Thank you very much.
Just 1 second. I'm not sure he's had enough experience in it yet. But anyways, this is for something totally outsourced. There's a couple things that she likes to get for market research kind of thing, and I'm not sure if we've had enough time within Ed-Soma yet to really answer this, but we can circle back to this at a later date if you want as well. But the question is if you had the keys to Ed-Soma, what would be the next feature that you would want to see within the platform?
Yeah, I don't know.
I figured.
I
I figured you need a little bit more time within.
Yeah, I need to see, understand. In fact, or if we're not recording, I can, or if they're not going to use this, I can just speak about some strategies.
Yeah, shut the recording off.